we wanted to take a trip. It was almost our 30th anniversary. And so we were just looking at different cruises around the world. And we found this one going to Antarctica. And it was a really steal of a deal with free airfare, which is about $1,500 down there, and then several $1,000s off the cost of the price. It's like, okay, we can't pass this up, and we're not getting any younger, so we better take it while we can. And so that's how we ended up on this trip last fall. It left about November 24th or something. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, or the day before Thanksgiving. And so we had a marvelous time. It was not the time we expected we were going to have, but we learned lots and made some great friends. So I'll get started here. So you can see Antarctica, and Antarctica is land that's covered with ice, unlike the North Pole where it's water covered with ice. So and you can see the mountains back here. Is this going to work? It may not be at the right angle. Oh well, the pointer's not going to work, but you can see mountains in the background, and then this beautiful ice everywhere you looked. Everywhere you looked was like a beautiful thing. I think the battery might have died. Yeah, I'm pushing the big button and nothing's happening. Okay.
Technology. Oh, there's something up there.
There it goes. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So just a few disclaimers and credits. I'm not an expert on Antarctica, so I don't know everything. I give credit to other friends who took some of these pictures who had like really nice cameras, and I just had a cell phone. And then some of the pictures may cause a little motion sickness as we get on to the videos that I'm going to show. And some people might find some of it disturbing, so I just always 45 minutes, and then I'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for you to ask any questions that you have at that time. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Okay, so here's where we were heading to. So the top piece of land is Argentina, and so that's the southern tip of South America. And then you go across the ocean about 750, 800 miles to the little peninsula of Antarctica that sticks out there. And that's the closest place you can get to. This is actually from the cruise ship brochure. And so you don't have an itinerary where we're going to stop at this place on this day and this place on that day, because you never know what the weather and the conditions are going to be down there. And so it's like, this is the area we may see stuff at. And so they go to different places depending on, where are the penguins right now, or where might you see whales or seals. So that was our destination. Here's another picture that shows a little bit more clearly the Drake Passage itself. And so it's a very volatile area of the world. The oceans has several oceans coming together. You have the warm water from the Pacific Ocean coming down, and then you have another band of water going around Antarctica that's very cold water, and that's coming together, and then you have the Atlantic Ocean also in there. And so it makes for very choppy water as you're crossing it. Also, storms can pop up very quickly and unexpectedly. So just a brief history here. It was discovered in 1820, so it was the last continent to be discovered on the Earth, and that was discovered by a German and Russian explorers about the same time. And then before I went, I read the book Race for the South Pole. So if you have interested in this topic, that's a really interesting book to read, to see about the conditions that they went through and how they prepared for going and spending prolonged months away on this it's actually a desert island, even though it's covered with ice. So Amundsen got there first in December 1911, and Scott got there about a month after he did, but Scott died on the way back on his trip because he did not plan ahead and really prepare well for the trip. So but that's, if you want some more, that really would recommend that book. Other explorers, you might be familiar with Shackleton, who was also one of those explorers who did a lot in the North Pole as well as the South Pole. His ship, unfortunately, got stuck in pack ice. So as the ice froze, it pushed together and broke the hull of the ship. And so that ship sank. And it is still at the bottom of the ocean there, about 9,000 feet deep. And it's designated as a historical site, so you can't go down there and take stuff from it. Like, you know, that's just, let me just jump down 9,000 feet and take something out of it. Anyway, it is protected. Other record-breaking explorers down there, some women explorers, Anne Bancroft, not the actress, was the first woman to the South Pole in 1993, and then she and a friend of hers, Liv, skied across the whole continent. You know, that's 745 miles in 50 days. That is a lot of mileage, cross-country skiing and camping out. So those are some tough women. I do not want that trip. So to protect Antarctica, there is the Antarctic Treaty that was made in 1959, and it was to help make sure that nobody was trying to conquer and take the country for its own. And so this treaty was developed by the first countries that had explorers go there. And these are just a few of the articles that are important. So one is that it's for scientific research, is what's going on there. The research shall be shared between the different countries. No one can claim a territorial sovereignty. And all bases are open for inspection at any time. So that way, it's not going to be a battlefield place to go. It is being protected by numerous countries. And that shows, and actually the United States was not one of the original countries that was in on this, but we jumped on the bandwagon soon after that. So there's a number of associations to help protect polar areas, and some of the things that they do is they limit the number of cruise ships that can go down there. They schedule designated areas to go ashore, so you can't just pop ashore just anywhere, and it limits the number of people on shore at any specific time. And that's called IATO, and they also are required before you get off land going to Antarctica that you have to watch this preparatory video that tells about the specific rules that they have. One of the things that we want to do, make sure, is that we don't spread disease, so that we don't take some foreign bacteria or fungus and leave it there in Antarctica that might destroy a habitat. And so we don't come in contact with wild animals. You can get close to them if they choose to get close to you, but you're not allowed to touch them or interfere with what they're doing. We wear ship-issued boots, so we did not wear our shoes that we brought with us from our trip. They had boots that you put on that they provided. And then we have special cleaning that's required when we come back, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. And then you can't go to the bathroom on shore. So if you can't go to the bathroom on shore, that kind of limits how long you're on the shore. So most of us, a couple of hours in that cold weather, that's about as long as you want to go. So you don't want the second cup of coffee that morning before you're heading out on the trip. Okay. So what is an expedition voyage? What makes it different? Well, it is more concerned with what's going on off the boat than on the boat. So there's lots of educational programs. They had numerous people with PhDs in a variety of science backgrounds and history backgrounds that gave lectures all along the way as we're going, because it takes 2 days to get from the tip of Argentina to Antarctica, 2 days sailing. So, you got 2 days, we need to be learning or doing something during that time. It focuses on the onshore experiences and not on the nightlife on the ship. Its focuses on education, nature, and culture. And then it also participates in scientific research. So all of those things together. One of the things that they're active in is the citizen science program, and this is one of the things that really attracted me to this. I have a science nursing background, and I love natural history. I actually studied that with my undergraduate degree, and so I was really looking forward to being able to participate in some of the research projects they had going on there. So one of them is doing bird counts. There was a guy who has his PhD and works for the Cornell School of Ornithology, and he was there doing some research on the birds that were in the Drake Passage and identifying those. And so every morning and evening we would have a 2-hour block where he would be out there with us, helping us to identify the different birds that we saw. And then with eBird, that's also something you can use here online if you're into the computer stuff, so that you can tell what birds you've seen in your neighborhood or in your backyard that day, so they can keep up with bird counts. Okay. And then Viking offers financial support. It actually gives some of these researchers stipends to be on this ship doing their research for us to help participate in. It also buys equipment for these researchers with whatever it is that they're studying, whether it be the mammal life or the phytoplankton or just the conditions of the water, any of that. And then it uses the ship's equipment for that research. So that's another thing that attracted me to this, is that Viking was really interested in protecting the area wherever we went and doing science to understand it better. Okay. So this is fjord phytoplankton sampling, and so it shows how they drag this kind of capsule behind the boat, make that collection of the water, and then they can take it back to the ship. They have the lab there where they can look with microscopes and look at whatever phytoplankton or pollutant that they're researching. So this is Ellie. It's a remote-controlled underwater camera, a little robot, and it travels along the basin of the floor of wherever we were traveling, so it's going to be close to shore where the water's not so deep. And by it going along a certain 200-yard laid out line, it can count the animals that they see in that area, whether it be shellfish or fish or giant octopus or whatever that's down there. So we got to see how that robot worked, and we were able to help change out some of the monitoring equipment that it has on it. And so that was really interesting to see that. And the guy on the left there is pointing out some wildlife that was on the video footage of what this robot had gotten. We also did the daily wildlife sighting, so not only looking for birds, we looked for whales or whatever else might be there. And this is the list at the end of the trip of all the different things that we saw, and it has the different colored dots beside it recording where we saw those birds. So, did we see those when we were in Argentina, in the Drake Passage, or actually at Antarctica? So then there's a lot of leisure time. You got 2 days, and so I'm a puzzler. I love to do puzzles. You might see my mom working puzzles frequently. Well, I inherited that puzzle gene, and so I really enjoyed working on those puzzles during this time. They also had music. This couple, they're actually married, played beautiful classical music, and we're in the parlor every afternoon and every evening playing for a couple of hours, so just to be near ambient music. And they were really high-class musicians. And there's also lots of artwork around Viking. All of their ships have some original artwork or some of its copies of like ancient Norwegian stuff, since the Viking cruise is a Norwegian-based company. So that on the left is a watercolor of some of the squids that they have been located in that area. The big felted bird, it was a life-size, like this big felted bird, that's a giant petrel. It's a very common bird that you see around there. And then this is a felted bird here, is the wandering albatross. It's the bird with the largest wingspan on Earth. And there was one wandering albatross that they tracked that it stayed in the air for 2 years. Because those wings, it glides and glides. It's like it skim the top of the water and get a fish, but never land. So it's pretty interesting. And to get an idea of the size of that bird, it was like those guys that were standing underneath it were over 6 feet tall. So the wingspan's like, I think 13 feet or something like that. So really impressive. So this is a macaroni penguin, which is one of the, another type of felted bird that they had there. And then, like, they almost looked like they could walk towards you. They looked so real. So I thought that was fun. They have kind of this wild hair on top. And then that's me with my wild macaroni hair after being windblown on the ship. And that's my husband, Tim, behind me there. So we were still in the bay at that point. We were just leaving, just pulling out, heading off to Antarctica at that point. And it was always windy down there. And then they had lovely decorations, and one of those was a caribou skin. I got bored one day and thought I needed to do something a little bit different, and so I was playing around, and my husband thought I was silly. It's like, oh, come on, have some fun. And so that's me underneath there, being my goofy self. They also had a really nice gym area that had 4 or 5 elliptical machines and bikes that you could use and weights to use. So while you're eating tons of food at the buffet, you can at least go work a few of those calories off in the gym. I think if you punch it again, it'll make the video go. So this is at sea. So you have to catch your weights before you can lift your weights. So a little extra exercise. And that was one of the calmer days at sea. So there was quite a bit of going back and forth. So there's 2 things that people describe going across the Drake Passage. One is the Drake Lake, and the other is the Drake Shake. So the Drake Lake is where it's nice and calm, and water's looks like a lake. And the other's when it is not, and you're like, where is my anti-nausea medicine? So, all right. And then we started seeing some ice flows, so we knew we were getting closer to land when you start seeing those. And then we saw a bigger ice floe, and it had this crab eater seal on it. And we were fairly far away from it, so this was a picture that one of my friends took that had a really nice telephoto lens. But that seal was probably about 8 feet, 10 feet long. It was really big, and they tend to be lone seals that like to hang out by themselves. And then we get land ho. We finally get down there, and it's like hot dog. We do see land after all, and it snowed about 3 or 4 inches on our way down there. So that's why there's snow on the ship. They provide in the rooms these really high quality binoculars for every room for the couple to share for when you're doing your bird watching and other activities. So this is a video from one of my friends.
Good morning from Antarctica. Oh my gosh. We're supposed to be on a 7 a.m. Zodiac, a little rubber raft to float through this ice to get to land. I sure hope we get to see some penguins today if I have to bear this misery. It is 5:30 a.m. on Monday, the 28th of November, 2022. But this is what we woke up to. We've been leaving the window cracked every night so we can hear the waves. And it never gets dark here. It's like Alaska. It is in the summertime. But can you get over the ice chunks floating? Woo, beautiful.
And so it was actually late spring for Antarctica when we were down there. So the temperatures every day were between like 32 and 35 degrees. And so this is more of the Drake Lake looking water, just nice little tiny ripples. See how calm it was that morning? So this is before we're going out, and you can see just the rock mountains behind that just kind of go up past the clouds there that were pretty stunning, the bits and pieces that we got to see of them. So we also, there's glaciers, blue ice, and icebergs, so just make sure you understand what it is. Glaciers are formed by the snow being compressed over hundreds and thousands of years. And so when that compression happens, it pushes the air out of the ice, and that's what gives the ice the blue color to it. And then once an ice breaks off a glacier, then it's considered an iceberg. And it has to be bigger than 15 feet long to be considered an iceberg. This was just a couple of pictures that my friend took with her telephoto lens of some of the snow and ice formations that were just really outstanding. The color of blue is just indescribable. This doesn't do it justice, but it's close. The wind and the storms down there have to shape the ice as it melts and freezes during the temperature changes. So safety, safety is always important. We had a safety drill the first day we were there, making sure everybody knew where they needed to go if there was an emergency. There's life jackets in every room. Unlike the Titanic, there are spaces for every person in one of those lifeboats. But you can see you're going to be like a little cork on the ocean in one of those things. So one of the things we were supposed to do was to be in a kayak. So the yellow-green is the kayak, the black is one of the Zodiac rubber rafts. So we had to practice getting from the Zodiac into the kayak under our own strength. And so if you couldn't do that, then you couldn't do the kayak. Well, it ended up the first afternoon we got there, the water was too choppy, and we didn't get to do our kayaks. And this is where this is the morning of the 28th here, and we were getting ready to board the Zodiac, and that's the black rubber raft. And so that's what it looks like. This picture came from the Viking cruises. So it holds between 8 and 12 people on it. And that's what takes you to all of your landings there, because it's not like there's a big pier and a group to welcome you there to Antarctica. So you have to take the little boats there and be able to get from that little boat onto the ice stairs that they've carved in for you to get out.
It's November 28, 2022, and this little Zodiac here with all these folks for the first landing on our cruise ship today. Woo! And there's people on here. Antarctica is their 7th continent. There's our boat that we're saying goodbye to. This is what the Zodiac looks like.
So that just kind of gives you a little feel for what that was like. And those black things around our neck are actually our life preservers. And they weighed probably about 8 to 10 pounds. And there's a thing that you pulled if you ended up in the water, and it would inflate. We had to wear those everywhere we went. And that's my husband there on the left. And we had the goggles. And the goggles were really helpful to decrease the glare. And also, as the water splashes as you're in the boat, it keeps it from getting you in your eyes. And especially important if you're wearing contacts, which we both do. So we're off to see the penguins. So there was a colony on this area in the bay. It's called Des Moines Point. It was discovered in 1903 by some French explorers. And they set up a little hut there. We'll see a picture of that in just a minute. On the left side, sorry, my pointer's not working, there is a little gray patch on the snow. And that is a colony of penguins. And so this is where we walked. Where they see where the orange poles are on the right, that's where we were walking, so you're not going to walk like right into the middle of their colony. Okay. So here's the little hut. They had a place there on the ice that they used a landing strip. Would not have wanted to be on that flight. And it was used for about 20 years, and now it's designated as a historical site. And I thought that little bird looking in the window was pretty funny. So I looked online and found a picture of that same hut when there was no snow around, and it's like on stilts about 8 feet off the ground. This is another little video. So they're doing, I think, a mating dance here. These are called snowy sheepbills. Like they were looking in from us when we were in the cabin. All right, y'all ready to dance? Let's get started. Y'all are ready. And then one of them kept coming over the window and pecking on the window. It's like, let me in, I want to get in there. It's cold out here. All right, so where we got the better look at the penguins was actually from the Zodiac boats, that we would take those within about 10 yards, or maybe not that close, 20 to 30 yards from the penguins. And so the first boats that went out there that morning, the Gentoo penguin is a very curious penguin. It's just a mid-sized penguin about this tall. And they would come up to those boats, the first ones that would come in. I was on the third group of boats that went out. And so they had kind of weren't as curious by that point. It's like, okay, it's boats, we're good. But they were just really cute, waddling around with their little arms behind them. And that some of them swimming in the water up there too. Okay. There's some more pictures up close of them. So you can see how that colony spread all the way up the hill. You jump, no, you jump. All right, so this is a video where you can see them a little bit closer. Pictures. And so I took that one with my cell phone. I was surprised it came out as good as it did. But that they do what's called porpoising in the water, so they kind of go and just dive up and down like that. So that was really fun. It was coming towards our boat. And they're identifiable because they have the little white dot on the top of their head there, and that helps to identify them. This is a little video of the penguin being curious about what's going on there. And there's one swimming in the water behind him too.
Set up and on the below, then go down further.
Up or down?
Yes, I'm just gonna squeeze by it.
Okay, sure.
All right, so I showed you the poles there, and so we walked inland, 100 yards, 200 yards. So we had been on shore about 30 minutes. We were supposed to have been there about an hour and a half. And we get called back to say, hey, the water's getting rougher, so we have to head back. So that's what we were getting ready to do. So we were disappointed it got cut short. All right. And then as we're walking back, we noticed these bags of stuff on the left, and it's like, what is all of that stuff? So there was a crew from the ship. Their job every morning was to probably get up 3 or 4 hours before we did and carry all the emergency equipment over to land. So if weather gets really bad, really quick, which you can do there's tents, food, heating elements for however many people are on land to be cared for during that time. So they really do a lot of safety precautions. Okay. So now we're back on board, and so the special cleaning that you do of your boots, first you step in the pan down the bottom right of a pan, a special solution that's going to kill any microorganisms that you might have picked up from the snow there, because you don't want to pick up stuff from one area in Antarctica and take it to the next place where you stop. And then you walk through the scrub brush machine. The lady in the back is doing that. It's kind of like the scrub brush that you get the mud off your feet of, but it was electronic and it scrubbed the sides of your boots. And then they cleaned it off with, they hosed it off after that. So meanwhile, on another Zodiac, as we were out on land, it has an explosion in it. And it's not a gasoline explosion because they don't run on gasoline, they run on diesel fuel, but there was not that kind of an explosion. They don't know exactly what it was. They probably know by now, but it's not like they're going to send out a letter to everybody saying, here's what happened. So, one man got tossed overboard, but they quickly saw that and they grabbed him and had his life preserver inflated, and they got him back in the boat. But at the same time, one lady got pushed up into the air a number of feet and then came back and landed and broke her leg severely. And so I wonder whether that was more the reason why we ended up having to go back to the boat earlier than it just being the weather, although the weather was getting choppier too. Okay. So because of that, you're about 800 miles away from any medical center. So one of the things you have to have before you go is a doctor's note saying it's okay for you to go and sign your life away to say, I realize if something bad happens, there's nobody there that's going to be able to take care of you. Well, they, I think two things happened. One, they realized they didn't know what was going on with the Zodiacs, and since that's what you use on every single trip that you take ashore, I think they were afraid of another one having an accident like that, so that at that point, our trip got canceled. We turned around and we headed back to Argentina because she was going to need surgery on that leg, and we could not care for that there on the ship, and there was no other ships close by, and it's not like you can fly a helicopter 900 miles. So that was it. So the other thing I want you to see on this is there's two black squares on the front. The first one is where the anchor drops out. The second one is actually windows in a room called the Hide, where you can watch the waves through there, and it's on deck 1. Okay. So we're going to look at a couple of videos of what the waves were like. So we were having, you can see it's a beautiful sunshiny day, lovely weather. We were having about 15 to 20 foot swells at this point of the waves. So it was rocking. And so you can show that first video. And then thinking about those old wooden ships that the first explorers went in, it's like, how did any of them ever survive? It's coming up. You can click again. So it was really cool getting to watch them at that point. Going to the next. Okay, so this is just a different view, and I did this one in slow motion, so it's just kind of interesting to see the water. So that was one of the bigger ones because it really stayed on the window for quite a while too. Okay. All right, so we kind of had the perfect storm going on here. We had the Zodiac accident, the lady with the broken leg. We had to turn and go to Argentina, and we were partially way back, and then this huge storm had come up in the Drake Passage that was going to have 30 to 60 mile an hour winds. So those were the calmer waves that day. It got worse. And then we were expected 15 to 30 foot swells. So you were walking down the hall kind of going like this when you were trying to get to your food. So anyway, it was kind of funny. All right, so we were about 3/4 of the way back from Antarctica to Argentina when in the middle, it was like 10:30 at night, where everybody had just kind of left all of the gatherings and just gone back to their rooms to get ready for bed. You had to get up early for a lot of stuff. So, and it's an older crowd that's on these ships. My husband and I were two of the youngest people who were on it. I don't know how a couple of those people passed their medical exam to get on that ship, but not. It's like, okay. It's like they must have had a son as a physician who was ready to get rid of them. I'm not sure. But then we were hit by a rogue wave, and a rogue wave is an extreme wave that's about twice the size of the other waves that are around it. It comes unexpectedly. You can't predict them. They can come from the opposite direction of where the storm's coming from. And, you know, they happen rarely, so it's not like you can really study these waves. And I got this picture from the NOAA, which is National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That if you want to know more about the physics of how it works, that site can give you a little bit more. So, what happened that evening is we had the rogue wave hit, and it was, they thought that it was somewhere between 60 to 100 feet. So it went over the top of the boat. And in that process, I think the double crashed back on the second deck, which is where I was with my husband. It broke out 6 different windows, and then water seeped in all the other rooms on that side of the boat, on that deck, and some water seeped in the third deck as well. So it was windows that looked kind of like this, because I had shades that came down to keep the light out at night because it never got dark. And so the water came spewing around the edges of that in our room. And it wasn't a lot, but it was, you know, an inch or two there on that side of the room. And we started hearing people calling for help. I was actually on the phone with my daughter. I'm in Antarctica, I could still talk to my phone with my daughter. My daughter on the phone, which was crazy. And I thought, oh, she's kind of anxious, so I don't want her to hear anything's going on. It's like, we gotta go. So when the wave hit, it sounded like an explosion. We had a glass carafe with water and 2 water glasses there. They fell off the desk and crashed into a million pieces, of course. So I was there in my sock feet, you know, worried I was going to step on glass. So, and then as soon as I hung up from my phone with my daughter, then I started hearing people down our hall calling for help. And I tried to call the front desk to let them know we had water coming in, and I couldn't get through because the line was busy because other people were also trying to call. So I was in my pajamas, so I just threw my clothes back on over my pajamas, and I had enough mind power to think, okay, grab your passport, your medications, and your wallet. And that's basically what we left the room with. When we opened the door, when we heard people calling for help, a lady comes in dressed in her bathrobe, and her husband, it happened so fast, he didn't have time to grab his robe, and he was like coming in, stark naked behind her. And so we gave him a robe. It's like, come on in, we'll help you, here, have one of our robes. And then when we opened the door to let them in, like 3 or 4 inches more water came rolling into our room. And so that's when it's like, really got concerning, and about that time they started having the alarm sound go off on the ship to say, you know, that it was kind of like a red alert or something. I don't remember what it is, but they have the bell that rings 7 times and to go to your stations. And so we did that, and by the time we had finished putting our shoes on and picked up our couple of things and given a robe to that couple, we walked back out in the hall, and there were already staff members down there directing people where to go. And so they responded very rapidly and very well. Then they brought us upstairs to the living area where we're working on puzzles, and I think that's my side there on the right of the green, to have everybody sit till we figured out what was going on, and they called roll up there, and I knew that there were at least 3 rooms that didn't have anybody respond that they were there from those rooms. I wasn't going to tell my family about what was going on. I just said we're having to come back because of the lady with a broken leg And then my sister calls my mom and says, did you hear about this wave that hit this ship? Is that Lucinda's ship? And it's like, well, I guess I gotta tell them what's going on now. So, you can see on the left there, that's the hallway. All that debris is like insulation and stuff that was coming down. You see the water's much more at that end of the far end of the hallway. This week, my son had never seen the movie Titanic, and so my husband and I watched it with him. And after I watched it, I thought maybe that was not a good idea, because I felt very anxious seeing that water coming in on that hallway. This is just a little too close to home, so don't think I'll ever see that movie again. All right. And so this is our ship back in Ushuaia in Argentina. You can see on that second deck, some windows are knocked out, or you can't even tell that it's knocked out. Most of them are white, and then there's a few in the middle that are black. Show the next picture. So that shows it a little bit better. And what you see, the white stuff coming down, that's the ceiling. So these rooms are made like a little pod that they stick in, and so the walls collapsed on those rooms and the ceilings. And so there were 6 people who were trapped in their rooms because of that. 2 of them were able to get themselves out, but ended up with like abrasions on their heads and injured joints. 2 people, one lady was knocked unconscious, and so she could not get herself out, and they got them out. And then there was another husband and wife who were also locked in their room where the walls had collapsed and the ceiling had collapsed. And that lady passed away, and her husband was severely injured, and that was just like 6 rooms down from where we were staying. So, so it's we didn't know that. They didn't announce that until the following day, because they had to let that person's family know what was going on first. So it was a very sobering announcement that they made shipwide that morning. Okay. So that's where our room was right there. That shows it a little bit closer. You can see it was just a disaster area in there. So one of the things that they have are screens kind of like this screen. They would have different pictures and sayings. And it changed throughout the day, and each day had something different. The last day I was on the ship, this one came up when I walked by and thought, I got to get a picture of that. So, travel with no regrets. So do I have regrets that I went on the trip? No. I got to see some fabulous things on the trip, and I got to meet some fabulous friends. We just finished taking another trip with one of the couples that was injured on the ship. We went to Iceland together. So it was really a lovely time. So this is a picture from some of our friends. The folks on the right are who I got a lot of the pictures from. They did a little more drinking than what I did. They were a lot of fun. The couple in the middle who we just took the trip to Iceland with, and then the couple on the left are from Australia. And so that may be where our next trip is, because in our Iceland trip, we missed half the ports on that trip, so now we get another free trip. So, so Viking has taken very good care of us. Cannot say enough good things about them. So one of the things, go ahead, one more. And so this was our last day in Argentina when we'd gotten back to shore, and I felt very fortunate to have been safe when trouble was so close to us. So a couple of things to show you. So this is our parka, and somebody said, oh, did Viking give you that? Well, not exactly. You pay a lot of money for that trip, so this just happens to be one of the souvenirs you get to keep. And so it's a double lining. It has like, it's not down, it's some sort of polyfill, specialized something, very warm inside, and then it's a waterproof outside. It has the patches of the different companies that help protect the polar regions. And then as we left, we got a little shield to go on here, and it says Gentoo penguins on it. So that was a really warm jacket. It came in very handy in Iceland as well. And this, it's not like you can buy souvenirs when you're in Antarctica. So my souvenir I got was when we were in Argentina, and this was actually a vest that was made in Argentina. So that helped keep me warm as well. So that's kind of the highlights. So does anybody have any questions? There'll be a microphone down here in just a minute. So the question was, how many days was I gone? I think it was 15. So the trip still lasted 15 days because when you get back to Ushuaia, even though we got back there a week early, it's a little tiny airport. It's a town of 100,000 people, so they only have a couple of flights that come in every day. And then there was another ship down there that also got damaged. And so, there was 1,000 people, not 1,000, I don't know, several hundred people that they needed to go. So this ship is one of the smaller ships that's on the ocean. It had, I think, 300 and something passengers, where, like some of these Disney cruises have 4,500 people on them, so it's a small ship.
How long will that Viking be out of service?
How long was that? That ship was out of service 2 weeks. But they did not fully repair those rooms. They had just kind of walled them off so they could not lose more money from it at that point. So some people lost everything. They didn't get any of their belongings back. They lost their cell phones, their passports, their wallets, their jewelry, all of their clothes. But we were fortunate. Ours was at the end of the hall that had kind of the least amount of damage to it, and so they were able to get in there the next day, and we got about 90% of our stuff back then, and then we had to be in shore in Argentina for the Argentina guiding body over water things. I don't know what the word is. And the Norwegian people to come and evaluate the situation and see what was the problem. So they had to interview a bunch of people, so we had to stay there for a while.
What happened with the people who lost their passports?
The ship helped people replace passports if they were lost.
I realized your trip was cut short by the incident. Did you see any visible signs of global warming with icebergs receding?
There was not exactly there, but one of the things is that it was snowing a lot, which is unusual because they usually don't get very much snow down there. And so because it's just a little bit warmer, there's more moisture in the air, it snows more, which can actually be harmful for some of the penguin populations because they require to have the snow melted on parts of the beach so they can have the stones to build their nests to have their babies. So when the temperature changes, it may benefit one group of animals and then hurt another. And I think the other thing that's really changed is not just overall global warming, but it's climate change that causes the severe storms to become more often and more severe. Like we've had more hurricanes in the United States, that kind of thing. And so that's the kind of thing that I saw. We got to hear a lecture on mammals, and in the Great Hall where they had it, it's like about 180 degrees, which was windows, and the screen would roll down from the ceiling. So we were watching that, and we could see out the windows while they were talking about marine mammals. We saw our humpback whale, and so that was kind of fun. So everybody ran to the window. Would I recommend my children taking that cruise? Yeah, but I would recommend go in January, not in November. So that's one of the things that happens is the cruise companies are trying to make as much money as they can off their ships, and they have pushed the outer limits of the season that they're traveling down there. And so I talked to somebody who'd been down there 2 weeks before. They had perfect weather. They said there was not rough going across the ocean at all. And then we hit, and this big, kind of like here in the spring, you can have a lovely week of 60-degree weather, and then you got tornadoes the next week. So, it just fluctuates a lot.
We went across
But I think in January is when the penguin eggs are being laid, and like February, March is when they're hatching, and you have the little baby penguins around. So those are good times to go. you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful.